And I think we'll actually get ourselves started. So to begin, thank you everyone for joining today's Chalk webinar, where I will be going over Planboard with you all. So for today's session, I had mentioned in the chat before, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page, please make sure to put your questions in the Q&A option. That's where our team will be looking to make sure that your questions get answered throughout the session. So please take advantage of that, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So my name is Michael Machinsky, and I will be walking you through just a bit of an overview of Planboard, just so that you know a little bit more about what that is. And then we'll be going through step-by-step how to get up and running with a new Planboard account. This webinar is focused towards new users, but if you maybe want a refresher on how to set up your school year or our main features, please feel free to stick around and we can address any specific questions at the end of the session. Or if you have any specific questions that you'd like addressed right now, you can feel free to ask them, and we'll be addressing them as we go along. We will be focusing on the free version of Planboard here for today. We'll touch briefly on some premium features included in our paid subscription, but most features of our apps are available under our free teacher offering. So we'll talk through some of those, but we'll really make sure to just give you an overview of how Planboard works and a little bit of what Chalk is and what we do. Just have a quick question here. Will this session be available afterwards? We will be recording this session and it will automatically be sent out to everyone within the next day. So keep an eye out for your emails to receive that. So I'm starting here on the main Chalk page. If you are interested in following along with me, I'd encourage you to do so. So I'm on chalk.com and I'm actually just going to click on the teachers option here. And from here, we'll be able to set up our accounts. Before we do that, I'll just give a brief overview of what Planboard is and what Chalk is. So Chalk, that's the name of the company, and Planboard is the name of the tool, which is our online lesson planner. So with Planboard, there are quite a few different things that you get, but first and foremost, it is a digital lesson planning tool. So it allows you to bring in all of your lesson planning into an online environment. You can create your content in there, and it is web-based, so you would basically log in from your browser, as we're going to be doing shortly. But we also have mobile versions of the apps. So if you are interested in downloading Planboard for either an iPhone or an Android device, you can just go to your app store and search Planboard, and you'll be able to find the app there. So if you're getting set up with a new account from scratch, I'd encourage you to follow along with me here on the web. But you can always go back and download the app later. As long as you log in with the same credentials, you'll actually have access to all of your content with the mobile version of Planboard. So like I said, Planboard, it's our online lesson planner, and it allows you to create rich lesson plans and not only create them for this coming year, but it's also a valuable resource that you can use year over year. We'll always have our free version of Planboard that you can access that is quite robust and can be very helpful. As you saw at the top, one of our key features here, we have standards and lesson progression monitoring. So with Chalk, not only do you get access to your lesson planner and our grade book, but with those, you can actually integrate directly any of your standards that you need. So we have quite a few. There's over tens of thousands of standard sets within Chalk right now. A lot of them are US-based. We're based out of Ontario, Canada, so we have all of Ontario in there as well, and many other provinces, as well as other international standard sets. So whether it's College Board or Next Generation Science standards, just to name a few, there are many available. And we'll walk you through that when we're going through the setup of how you can access those standards and just pull them in directly. So rather than manually typing those day to day, you can tie them into your individual lessons or your individual assessments. So you can do things like see for a given concept, how many times and at what times of the year did you cover it? And how did your students perform on tasks related to that standard and expectation? So that's one of the really helpful things that you can do with the standards within Chalk. In addition to that, there are options for you to be able to share your resources that you're creating in Chalk with your colleagues. So for example, there are options for you to be able to share your lesson with a substitute, and you can quickly and easily do that. You can give them full access to any videos that you've put in your lessons or attachments, any resources, as well as all of those standards, and all of that information will be readily available. There's a couple of other sharing options as well. Those are more geared towards our paid solution, but they really do make it more powerful if you're working with colleagues within Planboard. So we'll see some different options as we're going through the webinar here today. And as we mentioned earlier, the planner lets you create your daily lessons. So if you kind of think of the more traditional paper planner, you might have that under your desk or something that you're carrying around with you everywhere. It has your schedule in there. It has your classes laid out day to day. This really brings that into the digital environment where you can really customize the schedule and have it set up to meet your needs. And then not only are you using that 1 year, but being able to take advantage of being in a digital environment, you can reuse that year over year, make tweaks and adjustments to your lessons, and really keep all of that lesson content organized. So in addition to that, I mentioned earlier, we also have a gradebook application included in our free accounts called Markboard. For today's webinar, we will just be focusing on Planboard, but you will always have access to Markboard from your same Chalk account. It's free as well, so you can access both of those applications in the same environment. And from there, you'll be able to record your learning progressions with your students and really kind of create that digital portfolio for them to be able to access and see for themselves and yourself over the years. As I mentioned earlier, it's content that stays with you, so you can use that year over year. So we're going to go ahead and just get started with setting up our Chalk account. So if you've already gone to chalk.com and clicked on the teachers button or gone to chalk.com/planboard, we're going to start here and click on the sign up for free option at the top of the page. So here it's just going to ask you for some fairly basic, let's say, webinar information that you would see of any digital service. So mainly we just need an email and password to be associated with your account. So I'll just set that up there. Now you want to make sure that moving forward, you use the same email and password when logging in, especially if you're going to be using the mobile version. Make sure that you take note of what you're using here because the account is tied to the specific email. So generally, a lot of teachers rather use their school email to get their accounts up and running. And once you've done that, there are options to connect it to either your Google or maybe your Office 365 as a login method. And those are just really great ways to be able to pull resources from those environments directly into your Planboard account as well. So we can show you how to do some of that a little bit later. But for now, just make sure that you are using your email that you want connected to this account and create your password. And we're just going to click continue from here. And from here, this is where we're going to start getting up and running with the content for our Chalk account. And you can kind of think of this like building your paper planner, like you're designing what your pages look like, but it's in a digital space. So once we click let's get started there, the first thing that we're going to need to do is set up the name and dates for our planner. So it will give you an optional default name here, just the school year, but you can change this to anything that suits your needs. I'll leave it there for now. And then we can set up our first and last day of class. And one of the easiest ways to think about this, as you're really just kind of creating that bucket that everything is going to go into for the school year. So all of your classes and all of your lesson material is all going to be contained within this planner. So I'm just going to specify our start date, and I'll say it's maybe this coming Monday, and then edit the last day of class there. And once that's all correct, I'm just going to hit next step in the top right corner. And the next thing it's going to ask us is for our teaching schedule. So this refers to how our classes change from day to day. So for example, if you teach the same classes in the same order every day, you would have a daily schedule. It's the same schedule every day. So that would be all that you would need to set up. If you teach different classes on certain days of the week, but every week is the same, then the weekly option would be best. So even if you have maybe the exact same schedule Monday to Thursday, but Fridays are different, and that's consistent week to week, that would still be a weekly schedule. And you're basically thinking about it in terms of how long it takes for your schedule to repeat. If you have any other combination of schedules, so like a 2-day or alternating A-B schedule, or maybe multiple weeks or days, then selecting the rotating schedule option would be best. I'm actually going to pick this rotating schedule option because it has a few more options than the others, so I just want to show that off. But make sure that you pick the teaching schedule that best suits how your school year is going to look. So once you've selected whichever option you'd prefer, click Next Step. And you'll see something like this. No matter which option you pick for this step, the first thing you'll want to do is set your teaching days. So this is basically the days of the week that you are teaching any lesson content. So for most, it's probably Monday to Friday, but maybe you have certain days off, or perhaps you teach on weekends as well. You can just click the toggles here to set additional days or remove days accordingly, and you can see how that affects what your schedule will look like here. Now, if you selected a daily or weekly rotation, then this is the only thing that you'll have to do for this step, just setting your teaching days. For the rotating schedule, this means that you have a particular schedule that repeats itself over and over again throughout the year, and it's of a particular format. So maybe your school uses a 7-day schedule or a 2-day alternating schedule, or maybe even an alternating weekly schedule. So for example, you teach one set of classes in 1 week, and then a different set of classes the second week, and then it just keeps repeating in that order. Lots of options here, and what we're going to do is use this rotation builder to see how this rotation will look in your planner. Now, I know that for some schools that are moving into more of a hybrid learning model, rotations can get pretty complicated. The big question you want to ask yourself is, how long does it take for my schedule to repeat itself from the beginning? So maybe you teach some classes in school, and then maybe students rotate out to being remote classes, and the switches for several days. You will want to determine how many days it takes for that to repeat back from the beginning of the schedule, and set the rotation for that length. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to do a 3-day rotation. So I just edited the number here. But if you wanted more of a weekly rotation, then you can switch to the weekly option and edit the options there. But we're going to work with the 3-day option there. So from here, I'm going to click Next Step. And it'll show a little demo of where we're going after this, but I'll just take care of that ourselves. And now that we've created that bucket, like I was talking about before, which is our school year, we've set our teaching days and what kind of schedule we have. And now we're going to create and schedule our classes so that they populate lessons in our planner. So we'll start by clicking this button here to add a class. And you'll see that there are 2 different options for creating class blocks. So you have classes or subjects and non-teaching periods here. The classes would be anything that you intend to create lesson content for. So this could be something like math, art, physical education, but you can also create classes for things like school clubs or regular meetings that you might want to plan or take notes for, just as an alternative. The other option is non-teaching periods, and these are for scheduling as basically just a reminder for when you have these events, but that you won't be creating any content for. So for example, non-teaching blocks can be something like lunch, recess, prep periods, or morning announcements if you want to include those in your daily schedule. With either option, creating the classes is as simple as choosing a name and then selecting a color. So I'll start with a math class, and you can click here to choose from our preset colors here. And there are a few different options. Just one thing I'll briefly mention, if you're interested, we do have an option to create some custom colors, and that is actually part of our Chalk Gold Premium option. So if you're interested in upgrading, then you can go ahead and select that option. For now, I'm just going to use one of the presets here. And now that I have a name and the color, all I need to do is click Create. And it's going to create that one class for me there. So I'm going to make a few more here. Let's say English. I teach music. So I'm going to make a music class. And let's say drama. I like drama. And let's create a couple of non-teaching blocks as well. So we'll have one for lunch. Let's make that red. Red's a good lunch color. And maybe morning announcements as well. Now, if you use Google Classroom or Schoology, we actually have an option to import your classes from those apps as well. So this is one of the free options for integration that I mentioned earlier that we have available within Chalk. So if you're just getting up and running with your Chalk account today and you already have classes created in Google Classroom or courses in Schoology, you can actually just import what you created there and it will create your classes here within Chalk. So all it takes is signing into your Google account and following the steps there, and it will just create all those classes for you based on what you've already created in those apps. And at that point, you'll be able to customize the names, or if you need to, you can change the color as well. Pardon me. So now that we've created our classes, and you were probably prompted to do this already when you created your first class, you can start dragging them onto your timetable to schedule them. So what you're doing here when we're creating our timetable is you're creating the schedule that will repeat itself over the course of the school year, and it will populate your planner with all of the correct classes for each day's lesson planning. And there are a few ways to schedule classes on the timetable, but the easiest is to just click and hold down your mouse and then drag them to the appropriate dates. So let's say you have a specific class length. It will give you a default the first time you do it, but let's say, let's start that on 9. Say we have an hour-long class as our regular. You can just click at the bottom of each of these blocks and drag it to change the length of the class. And what this is going to do by doing this early is that the next time you drag a class onto your timetable, it's going to default to the most commonly used time that you've already used. So it's just this easy. You can bring things in, put them where they need to be, and be able to build your planner using this method. And once they're placed onto your timetable, you can click on them and hold it down to move them around. You can change the length, as I mentioned, by just holding down when you click on the bottom of the box, or you can click the red X to remove any box that you don't need. And you can start to build your schedule for these days. So let's say actually I've got this class here. This is my rotation schedule. Now let's say you have some classes that are populating on multiple days. So for example, if you have a weekly schedule, maybe you'll see days A through E or 1 through 5, depending on how you labeled them. And maybe you have a class on all days that you want to schedule at once. Well, you can use this option here to the right of all the names. Click the schedule button, and it's going to give you this little window here where you can enter the start time. And you can be as granular as you need to be. So for example, if you have a class that goes from, let's say 10:23, I know at some of the schools I've worked at, we had kind of off start times or travel times of 7 minutes. So every class would start and end at a very unique time. But you can just edit that directly and then select all of the days in your rotation that you have this class to insert them at once. And then click schedule. And whoops, I accidentally put them as PM and not AM. Let's move that a little bit up. But as you can see, it created all these blocks at once. And this can be a really useful time saver as well if you have even classes on all of the days, but maybe at different times of day, because then you can just populate all of the blocks at once and then move them around to where they should be scheduled. And if maybe the times aren't quite right, you can always click onto any existing block and you can manually edit the time. So maybe I wanted this to be 10:04 to 11:04. And actually, I didn't mean that to be English. That should have been music. I can just edit that here and click save, and it will make all of the changes directly on my timetable. So lots of options there. Another way you can actually add classes to the timetable is to just draw them. So if you click on any empty space and drag, you can create a block. And it's just like the previous little window where you can select which class to enter and edit any details as necessary. Now, one thing that I'd like to show is that actually we do support overlapping classes. Planboard fully supports overlapping classes. So you can actually schedule many classes for varying times, depending on what your start and end time are. And that way you can have multiple classes going on at once, which can be very useful for things like teaching specials or tutoring groups or split classes. And that's just something that you can kind of see as you're moving along. So it will automatically shift to present the information in the most useful way for you. So let's create just a bit of a schedule here. I want to make sure I have lunch in all my days. And let's put the morning announcements there. We're going to say that we have a lot of morning announcements. We probably don't need a full hour. Let's adjust this a little bit. I want this all. Okay, day 3 are going to be really big announcements. Depending on how complicated your schedule is, this step may take some time to fully complete, but the benefit is that you only really need to do this once at the start of your school year, rather than needing to update your schedule day after day or week after week or anything along those lines. And if at some point throughout the year your schedule changes, maybe you've been switched out of a class or there's a change from semester to semester within your school year so that classes are in a different scheduling order, you can actually just update your timetable within Chalk. And those changes will happen and only take effect from the date that you make them. So for example, let's say your schedule changes on November 19th. You can make your changes on that date and all of your previous lessons that you've already created and scheduled will be unaffected. So it's just a very useful way that you can make sure that you can adjust to changes in your schedule without having to figure out how to rearrange everything that has already been done. But let's finish up our timetable here. If you're following along with me, you may want to move past this setup step. And if so, that's great. If you'd prefer to take your time to set up your schedule later, then I recommend you just leave yourself on this screen and maybe watch as I take you through a small tour of the app. But I'm going to just finish up here and click Start Planning. And welcome to my personalized planner. So now I have my schedule created. And here's a little note about where you can find some of our help resources. So we do have a live chat available Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. As well, we have, you can email us at support@chalk.com and we'll always get back to you within 24 hours. And any help resources we also have up in the top right that you can click there. But now we are in our planner and we're actually going to go ahead and start creating lessons for different days. So as you can see, we're on a week view. So we have different view options here. We can look at the current week or the first available week because I started my school year on this coming Monday. But we can also go into a day view if I want to look at one day at a time. And if I'm ever not sure of what day I'm supposed to be on, I can use this Quick Today button to take me to the nearest available teaching date. But let's just go into the week view here. And I'll just kind of show you some of the basics of what you can do when it comes to creating your lesson plans. So from here, we can just kind of click anywhere within our lessons and it will open our lesson editor. And even before we do that, you can see that we have this option to choose a template. So you can actually create your own lesson plan templates. And there aren't any in Chalk that are pre-existing, but you can always create your own and go ahead and add those to your lessons. But first, let's have a look at just what we can do if we're creating these lessons day to day from scratch. And the first thing you'll notice here along the top, we have different formatting options that you can use. And it's very similar to anything that you'd find in a Word editor, such as Google Docs or Microsoft Word, or just any other kind of text editing document. So you can actually kind of think of this as a kind of box that we're editing and is a document that you're working on. So I can start by adding some lesson content here, nothing too fancy, just for the display. But as you're working, you can kind of see that your lesson is saved automatically for all of your changes. You can just see that little spinning circle at the top whenever we make some changes. And we have a lot of different options here in terms of formatting. You can insert tables. Those are very popular. So you can add any lists. And one of the things I do just want to quickly show is that you actually have the option to insert video and other multimedia directly into your lessons. So for example, let's say I've got this little fractions video that I want to put into my lesson for my students. And I can just copy the link. So I'm going to click the share button in YouTube and just copy that to my clipboard. And then here, using the insert video option, it will automatically default to inserting a URL. So I can just paste that in there. And when I click insert, it's going to bring that content directly into my lesson. So now whenever I need to access this, I have that multimedia there. It's available for myself. If I share it with anyone, then they'll be able to access it as well. So that's just a very useful feature in terms of being able to pull that digital content into your lessons. And you can actually click on it and play from here. I won't do that because I don't want it to play. But here, in addition to some of the text editing options at the top, we also have some options down below that you can take advantage of. And the first one I want to talk about here is standards. So as I mentioned earlier, within Chalk, we have access to tens of thousands of standards in our database, and we can add them directly from our lessons here by using this search. So let's say, for example, I'm looking for the new Florida Best standards. If I'm looking for those, then what I want to do is first enter the region or governing body for the standards, followed by the grade level that I'm looking for. So in this case, let's say I'm looking for Florida Best, grade 4, and then the subject area would be math. And as you can see, that's just right at the top there. So I can just click there, add it to my list, save, and now I have all of the standards data available to use for my lessons. And I can attach that to my lesson content and say that the topics that I'm covering address these learning expectations. So let's just do another one quickly. I can add another one here. We're based in Ontario, so let's say Ontario grade 8 science. Oops. That's right, it's called Science and Technology here, but I can just add that set there. And now I have multiple standard sets attached to this class. And now anytime that I am editing a class here, a lesson, I have those available for me to pull into my content. So let's have a look at what that looks like here. I'm going to click on standards. And let's say I want to find a particular standard. I can maybe search for the code if I know it, or the topic. So if for science, I want to know about forces, I can just type that into the search there and it will display the ones that meet that. So for example, maybe this lesson deals with explaining how forces are transferred in all directions in fluids. I can add that to this lesson by just clicking these buttons here. And you'll see they're added to this short list on the right. And I can just hover over and view that information here. And once I've clicked save, those standards are now applied to this lesson and connected with that lesson material. And I have that information linked within Chalk and be able to quickly access that so that I can know that my lesson today addressed this learning expectation. And see, from there, let's have a quick look again here. So aside from adding standards, you can also attach external files. So if you're looking for a file from your computer, I have this fractions worksheet here that I want to add, and I can just attach it to my lesson, and it is available here. So if I click this link or I share this with anyone, they'll be able to click the link as well and have access to this worksheet here. As well, you can connect any files from Google Drive. Or if you use Office 365 and you link your account to Office 365, then you'll see the option to bring in OneDrive files as well. And then the last one here is assessments. So right now I don't have anything because I haven't set up anything in Markboard yet. But once you go through, and if you are using both Markboard as well as Planboard, so Markboard is our gradebook, then you'll be able to connect all of your assessment information to specific lessons and even connect it to your standards. So maybe you can say, take a look at what content that you've covered with regards to a particular standard, how were your students assessed on that performance, and have an idea of how well they were able to display that learning. So we highly recommend that you take a look at that as well. And also, I'm just going to title this. This is going to be my fractions lesson. And so now you can see that that lesson is titled. It is very useful to go back and understand what content you've taught by adding a lesson. So that's something that we very much recommend. And next, we'll just kind of cover here. If you'll notice that I mentioned before, when you hover over any of these blocks, you'll have the option to choose a template. So by default, there won't be any templates, but if you click the button here, you can start creating them. Or I'll actually show you how to reach there from the menus. So if you open the Planboard menu up top, then we also have this templates button. And that'll take us to the templates page. So what is a template? A lesson template is exactly what it sounds like. It's a model or blueprint that you can apply to lessons or an entire subject's lessons that pre-fills your lessons with data or a structure that you've created. So if you've ever used a particular lesson format in your daily planning, you can have that created in Chalk and use it year over year, and can save yourself a lot of time if you're including the same kind of information in your daily lesson planning. So for example, let's create a simple one. I'm just going to click this button here and call this my basic template. And just a fairly typical lesson format. So maybe I'll include space for recapping previous lessons at the top, and then more of the body of the lesson. So introductions, maybe moving on to what learning activities I'm going to be engaging with my students, and any other useful sections or information that I would want to include for most of my lessons. So I can even have a space at the end for personal notes, and we can add some formatting, make it look a little nice. We can add some horizontal lines to break up the sections. I suppose I would want those lines on top now that I think about it. But as you can see, anything that you can do within our lesson editor with regards to formatting, you can do for the templates as well. And you'll notice that I didn't put in any space for, say, a date or a lesson title or standards to attach, which you might find in lesson templates that you see online, because that's already built into our lesson editor in Planboard. Now, you may be wondering if we have a database or catalog of lesson templates that you can choose from, and unfortunately, that's not something that we offer at this time. It is something that teachers have asked us about, so we are looking into it as a possibility for the future, but for now, free teacher accounts will not come with any pre-made lesson templates, but thankfully, it is really easy to make your own within Chalk. So from the templates here, you just create the content that you want to pre-populate. Do you have a question here? Can you copy a template you've already created in MS Word? Absolutely. Anything from another lesson editor, you should be able to copy into here, format it as appropriate. We've often seen teachers put tables into their lessons and into their lesson templates. So you can build a template that has a lot of structure to it. I do want to warn against being a little bit too fancy with tables if you are planning on sharing weeks worth of lessons as PDFs. Because table formatting can get a little wonky if there's too much going on and it's trying to fit everything in. But anything that you can do within our lesson editor, you can include in your template so that you don't have to start all your lessons from scratch. So now that we have this template finished, so to speak, we can start assigning it to our classes. So I'm just going to click this button here, Assign to Classes. And it will display all of the teaching classes or subjects that we created. We can't apply any content for non-teaching periods, so we don't see those. And it's as simple as clicking to assign them. So let's say adding them for math, English, and drama. We'll leave music open. And if you have other school years created, you can also assign them for that as well. But that's it for this step, actually. We're all done. And now I'm just going to go back to my planner, and I'm going to go to the week option. And now, as you can see, our lessons have been pre-populated with this content. So all of our empty lessons, all of our blank lessons have been pre-filled with this content. But you'll notice that this one was unchanged. And that is because we only apply templates to empty lessons when you do it at the subject level, because, well, basically, we wouldn't want your work to be erased or deleted by mistake. Obviously, that's an awful thing to have happen to you. So we have many safeguards to ensure that your work is kept safe. So templates that are applied across a whole class will only affect empty or blank lessons, will not be applied to anything with content in it already. So if the work that you had done, so if we didn't need this at all, then we could actually just manually apply a template by clicking this button here. And it will warn us that if we do this, it will delete all of the content. We're basically pre-filling, applying that content over what we've already created. So we can choose to do this if we want, but otherwise it will never automatically delete any content, and will only pre-fill empty lessons. And another thing I just wanted to show here is that once you make some changes to an empty lesson, you'll actually see that it changes how it looks a little bit. So for example, these empty lessons, they all have the gray text. This has the darker black text. So it helps you distinguish which lessons you've already planned, as opposed to lessons that just have a template applied. If your template has a lot of writing in it, this is especially useful. And that's all writing that you won't have to do manually for every lesson. It's all done in advance and helps to save you time when planning your lessons. Now, maybe before I wanted to get into some really in-depth lesson planning, there are a few more scheduling options I wanted to take care of first. So I just want to quickly go over some of those options. So some of you may want to go back and make some adjustments to your setup. We have options there from the gear menu in the top right. So we have all the different account settings. I'm going to go to my semesters, which is basically the different planners that we've already created, or our school years there. And if you've been using Chalk for a while, you're probably going to see multiple school years here. I've only just got the one because this is a brand new account. But in fact, if you're getting set up for a new school year, this is where you would go to do so, the semesters page, and you can click this button to create a new semester. And I do just want to show you one neat little aspect here. Let's make sure, ooh, that's a bit late. So if you've already created content in here, and maybe it's another year, something that we've recently kind of streamlined is that you can actually copy material from existing semesters. So let's say you're setting up next year, you can choose to bring over all of the content from a previous year or selected content and maintain all of that historical data and just go back and refer to it. You can copy it into your new school year and have all those lessons you created available. You can adjust them or improve them for the next coming year without having to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. And it's just one of the ways that you can save yourself time in the future by using a digital lesson planner over a traditional option. So just wanted to highlight that there. And then another thing I wanted to show off here and point out to everyone is the off days. So if you have days, whether it's a holiday or maybe a professional development day where you won't be teaching, you can actually mark these on your schedule. So you can put in a reason, you can say PD day, and then set it for the appropriate date on your planner. So let's say just the 14th. And what it will do is that it will basically remove that day from your schedule. As well, you can automatically input holidays. So for example, if I taught in the United States, I can just quickly add all of those dates for holidays that I know that I will not be teaching. Or if there are some changes, so for example, we actually, in my state, teach on Veterans Day, I can remove that as well. But adding all the holidays for your region can be a very quick way of adding these dates to your school year. And now let's say that maybe you don't have an off day per se, but a day that has a different schedule from your regular timetable. So for example, I taught at a school where once every quarter we had a half day where we taught a condensed schedule of selected classes. And if I wanted to be super diligent, I could actually set up that schedule ahead of time by navigating to the date I need. So let's go to my week view. And I'm just going to use the calendar drop down here to navigate to sometime in October. And let's say this is the day here. So October 6th, I can click this menu here, which are the same options that you would see on the day view. And I can go to edit schedule. And what I can do here is actually make changes to my daily schedule. I can remove classes. I can switch classes. I can make any changes that I could make on the regular timetable. And then I can update that schedule here. And it will apply those changes for just this date. So it doesn't affect my rotation that I set up previously. It doesn't affect my timetable. It just applies it to this date. And then if I wanted to reset it to a different schedule, then I can use the realign rotation option to make it a day A again. But this is just something that I can do ahead of time and create those custom schedules for when you need to add something very quickly. All right, so one of the things I just wanted to show you while we're here and looking at our planner are the sharing options that are available. So just in general, as a rule of thumb with Chalk, when you're looking to share content, look for the share button for whatever context it is that you're looking to share. So for example, if I'm looking at my lesson and I want to share this lesson, we have a share button here in the corner. If I wanted to share my week or something for my week, I can click the share button here. Or for a particular day. We also have options as well. So a lot of different ways that you can share your content. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these do come with the free version. So for example, if you're looking to share a lesson with a substitute, I'll show you how to do that right now. So we're just going to start by going to our lesson and clicking this share button here. And the first option we're going to see is to be able to put this into resources. So this is something that is available for free accounts, and you can actually see our link to our resources app here. And what this is kind of a option to store any lessons for quick access. So for example, if I wanted to save this lesson and reuse it year over year and have it very quick to access, I can enter my email here and share it with myself. And what that's going to do is it's going to save this lesson for me to quickly access. As well, you can also put in colleagues' emails and it will actually send them the lesson directly. It'll attach as a PDF and you can send that to someone. So that way, if you need to share it with a substitute, for example, you can do it through this resource. We also have printing in PDF options. So these are all available for free accounts as well. And they're pretty self-explanatory. They just allow you to create that PDF and download it or share it as necessary. What I would like to highlight though is the public link option. So essentially what this does is it's a public link that you can send to anyone. Just kind of copy there. And if we access it in another browser, so essentially this will look how it will look to anyone who accesses this link. They'll see all of the content here. They'll see any embedded media, any attachments, any standards information as well, and we'll be able to access that without needing a Chalk account. So you can share this with your students, your administration, any substitute teacher that you need to share this with, and that's available there. We have the option for individual lessons within Chalk, but also for our Chalk Gold subscription, we do have a bit more robust sharing options available. So for example, we have the option to share an entire day's worth of lessons or the week, or even your entire planner with one public link. So this can be great if you have an administrator that you report to that wants to see all your lesson content. You can just send them the public link for your entire school year, and they'll have view access to all of your lessons. And it's always showing them the most recent saved version. So it's not something that you would need to resend. Just every time they access it, they would see your most recent content. We also have some options here for sharing to Google Classroom or to Schoology. These are also part of our premium option. There is so much that you can do in Chalk within your free teacher accounts, but if you're interested in upgrading, there is a button in the top right corner that I'll just briefly highlight, and you can click there for some more information. We are developing more and more premium features, such as exporting your schedule to Google Calendar, as well as more customization options for the future. But I'll just go ahead and close that. And we're running towards the end of the session, but there's one thing I wanted to quickly go over because I mentioned it, and that is the standards tracking page. So if we go into our Planboard menu and go to Planboard settings, you can click the standards button here, or as well, you can get there through the gear menu in the top right. And this will take us to this page here where we can view any classes and any standard sets that we have applied to our subjects. And essentially what it will do is also show us where we have used these standards. So if we look through here, we can see this list here. I've only applied a couple of standards here, but if I click on this detail, it'll actually show me what lessons I have assigned the standard to, and I can click this link to be taken to that lesson. As well, I can look at any assessments that have been linked to this particular standard. And it basically just gives you an overview of what your standards implementation has been throughout the school year. So you can look at this data and say, okay, when did I incorporate this expectation into my lesson planning? How did my students react to it? And just have that data readily available. As well, you can export this to either PDF or CSV format. So if you have administrators who want to see your standards implementation, then there is just a very quick and easy way to be able to export that for all of your subjects as necessary. And just looking at the time there, that does kind of bring us to the end of our presentation today. And we will be sticking around to answer some questions. But to be honest, I've pretty much just scratched the surface of what you can do with Planboard. Hopefully I've piqued your interest even just a little bit. And if you haven't used it yet, for those of you who have used it, and I know I saw some questions going on there from other users, hopefully you got your questions answered today. At this point, I do just want to start off by thanking everyone so much for your time today. We really do appreciate you joining us for this webinar, and we'll stick around to answer any questions. Before we do, I just want to start off by reminding everyone that we have the live chat available, and for you to take advantage of that, it's always going to be there Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that's just available in the corner there. If you are outside of those hours, you can reach out to us over email at support@chalk.com, and we will get back to you within 24 hours. So I would highly encourage you to do that. And we also have support articles available that you can reach through the question mark icon in the top right, and that will take us to our knowledge base there at help.chalk.com.